So you're about to hear from two amazing people who have done some incredible things this year. Chris Atkinson, ultra runner, who completed the Ultra Trail Mont Blanc in early September. He was one of 1,757 finishers out of 2,693 starters. So that's a lot of people actually didn't finish. He's also my husband. And Hughie Castle, who earlier this year ran the Antarctica marathon, and she would be one of the few people who actually get that opportunity as well. In the audience, we also have some special people, and I know we have some ultra marathon runners here as well, but we've also got Chris's support crew, and they're hiding up the back, but I'm sure at some point we will hear from them too. So in terms of the format for this evening, I have a couple of early questions for our speakers, and then each is going to talk to a slideshow. We're going to watch a little bit of video footage. I'm going to then ask them some questions, and then we're going to open it up to the floor. So my first question is for my husband, and I probably know, well, I might not know the answer to this, but first question for Chris is, where did it all start, and at what point did you think that running a really, really long way was a good idea?
I guess, like, I've always been a runner, so, and I've always kind of grown up around the trails. So I grew up in the South Island, and growing up, trail running wasn't even a thing back then. You just sort of went into the bush and went running. And so I've done that from like an early age. So I've always sort of competed, I guess, well, ran on the trails. I've done a lot of competing in terms of running, and my body's not as kind of young as it once was. Like, I used to run quite a few marathons, and then I just found like I was just getting too sore, and so I started running more and more and more in terms of my training on the trails, and I could run a long way because my body wasn't getting as injured. And so I guess, you know, I could run 50k, that was quite easy, so that wasn't really a challenge. So I guess the next kind of big thing was that 100k mark. And so once I'd done that and I'd learned a few things, I guess the next kind of little step up is to 100 miles. And like after you enter like Tarawera, I've done that 100-mile race over there, and also the 100k race, it enables you to qualify for other races. So that's the case for like several trail ultra marathons around New Zealand and around the world that qualifies for other bigger kind of things around the world. So that's kind of how I've kind of progressed and how I sort of got into the sport.
Okay, and Hughie, to you, at what point did you decide you'd like to do a marathon in the coldest continent on Earth? And was it your first marathon?
Yeah, so like Chris, I've pretty much been running before I could walk. Had a little bit of a divergence and played a bit of rugby and hockey and stuff, and then when I retired from rugby, went back to running and triathlons. So I've done a few marathons, and I'm like going, I wonder if it's a thing that you do a marathon in every continent, like combining my love of running with my love of travel. So I googled it, like, yeah, it's a thing. And so then I've just been slowly working my way through combining a trip overseas with doing a marathon. So far I've done several in New Zealand. I did the Great Wall of China, did one in Rio de Janeiro, and then I've done Antarctica. So I've got Africa, North America, and Europe to go. So,
wow, I'm sure we'll hear about that a bit later
yeah,
on. Right, so now I'm going to hand over to Chris for his presentation.
Okay, so that's kind of like a good bit. That's kind of finishing, and so that was taken like at about midday, 42 hours after I started at that same location in Chamonix in France. Okay, so they keep adding events all the time, but essentially all of these events are qualifiers for the UTMB final series in Chamonix in the last week of August each year. And so there are only 3 races in Australia and New Zealand that act as qualifiers. That's Tarawera in February, Ultra Trail Kosciuszko in Australia in December, and Australia in the Blue Mountains in May. And so I run the Australian Blue Mountains and also Tarawera a couple of times as well. So I had enough points, or they call them running stones, to enter the lottery. So there's a lottery in January each year to get into UTMB, and there are thousands and thousands of people who want to get in, and so they only let about, I don't know, was it 2,700 people in? And so I found out that I didn't get in actually at the end of January, so they said they would wait until they'd receive back confirmations from the people they'd offered the registrations to, and then there might be some spare registrations left over, and I missed out on that. And so I kind of thought to myself, oh well, I might as well just focus on something else this year. And then later on in March, because it was the 20th anniversary of the race, they opened up a few more entries and said, hey presto, you're in. And then I got onto the Airbnb website and whatnot, and it was all on. So it's a big kind of world thing. There are lots of races in Europe. There's pretty much over July, August, June, July, August, a race every weekend in those European countries, because there's so many of them. It's heavily European focused. When you're actually out on the course, most of the runners are from France or Italy or Spain, but there's lots of other runners from, I guess, Asia. Trail running's really big in Asia. Even South America, there was a few people from South America and a few Aussies, and not too many Kiwis. I think there was about 14 New Zealanders, all up out of 2,700 people. So the whole week is about all of these other events leading up to the final race of the week-long trail running kind of festival in Chamonix in the Alps of France. And so UTMB starts on Friday night, but PTL, the one in the middle, starts on the Monday morning. And so that's a 300-kilometre race, which is run in teams, and they take essentially 5 days to run that race. It's not really a run, it's more like a hike, over the French Alps. And so Jo, my support crew, one of my support crew people, she did the ETC on the top right-hand corner, which starts and finishes in Courmayeur in northern Italy. So Jo might want to talk a little bit about that later. And that was really cool, going over to Italy through the Mont Blanc tunnel, which connects France to Italy. And so there are lots of various events. There's the 100k CCC, the 50k OCC, and it's essentially if you are looking to take out the World Trail Running Champs or title, you need to turn up and run these races. So it's the most competitive set of races, I guess, in the whole year for trail running. And what I didn't fully understand was how massive the sport was in Europe. And so it was really nice being out or being completely surrounded by trail runners for a whole week, and seeing, like, even when you were training, seeing like families out running together, and that was a pretty cool thing. So the race started in Chamonix, and so Chamonix is here in France, and then it starts on the Friday night at 6 o'clock, and this here is the mountain range, which has Mont Blanc in the middle, and essentially you go anti-clockwise around the mountain and you finish up at Chamonix, and that's the tunnel through the Courmayeur. So this part over here is Italy, and the border to Italy is about here, and then up here here is the border for Switzerland. So there's a mountain here, and there's a few mountains in this little zone here. And so that's the profile of the run. So it's 171 kilometres, and like Chamonix itself is quite high by New Zealand standards, like it's at 1,000 metres. And so I've never sort of been that high running before, so for the first week it was a little bit tough, training and just getting used to it, but during the race it was okay, I found it okay. So the first part is essentially, you start at night, you start at 6 p.m, it gets dark at about 8:30, and then by the morning, you head up like, this here is actually a long, steep climb, which takes a long time. And I underestimated, like, there are aid stations here, so this was where my support crew kind of left me, so they didn't do that intentionally. So I guess, you know, Lauren and Joe were following me on a bus, and it's pretty complicated getting around the course. So there's a lot of geography and mountains in the way. And so really this is the last point where they can say hi and support me and give me food and help me out. And I wasn't feeling too bad at that point. And then I guess all of this is at night, and it's snow up here. And then you come down here and you kind of think to yourself, oh yeah, this is cool. And then you get to this part here, and then you get up again, and then it starts getting light about here. And then you're coming over here to Lac Combal, and you're feeling like at about 7 in the morning, absolutely dreadful. Like you're feeling like, man, that is so hard. I don't know how I'm gonna finish the rest of it. But you kind of, you know, just sit down and chill out a bit, and the aid stations are packed full of, you know, food, and you can rest there as long as you like, as long as you don't rest there too long, because there's a limit to how long you can be out on the course for. So they tell you the limit at each aid station, and so that's kind of handy to keep an eye on. So this is kind of all isolated. So that's Coldwell Ascent. So we're into Italy here, come down here, and this is really the next point where I get to see my support crew, John Lauren at Cormodia. And meanwhile, they've been kind of travelling around in the middle of the night on a bus through a tunnel, like sleeping kind of in the bus and on the ground, and so they're sort of there waiting for me at about 10, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 a.m. in the morning when I sort of get there, and they help me out. And essentially that was going to be the last point at which they would help me until Switzerland. But I guess Joe's quite intuitive. And there's another spot up here at Anuva before you climb up Grand Col Ferret and go into Switzerland. And like I was kind of feeling, I just powered up that hill, and I was kind of feeling good, and I was taking photos along there. And then all of a sudden I just completely ran out of petrol, and that was at about 4 p.m. on the Saturday. And then, so, you know, Joe and Lauren sort of, I guess, allowed me to get a bit of sleep, and they fed me, and I was just lying down on the ground basically, with a few other people just carved out. And thinking about like, how am I going to get up this thing, which is real steep. That's the highest peak on the course, Grand Col Ferret. But after I spent about an hour there with them, it's amazing. Like if you just back off and rest, and give your stomach enough time to absorb the food, you get back into it. And so I got up to the top of that mountain and went down the other side, and that was a really long and quite pleasurable descent. It was really beautiful coming down here into Switzerland. It's kind of, I'll show you some photos, but it's just kind of like something out of like a fairy tale really, how people live over there, and they, you know, quaint little houses, and they have cows with bells around them. And it's like, you know, something out of a, I don't know, nursery rhyme. So it was neat, and the support over there is phenomenal. Like all the French people are saying allez, 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 and even in the middle of the night when you come across people, they're all going allez, 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 come on Chris, and you can do it, and blah blah. And so the support is like second to none of everyone in the race. And so I got down into Switzerland, and it was nighttime. It was, by the time I got to the bottom here, it was in, I guess, the middle of the night. Got through to here, and then I was a bit worried about the last 3 climbs, and they were really, even though they're not as big as these ones, they were really steep. Like that was steep. That was really steep.
It's probably one of the steepest things I've ever gone up on 2 feet. It was way steeper than that. Charts, jeez. And then the sun came up at about, I don't know, Valasang, that was the Sunday morning, and then this last little bit took me a few hours, and then I finished Chamonix midday. So, yeah, it was a real journey, and like, I guess the interesting thing about something like that is you know you're going to have some low points, and it's about how you manage the lows and you deal with them, because there's lots of high points and you're feeling really good, but you just know that somewhere along the line there's going to be some issues, and it's about kind of problem solving and having a strong team of people to, I guess, around you to support you. So he's at exactly the halfway mark. This was kind of like just a few hours before I was kind of lying on the ground, sort of, you know, carked out. But it was just stunning. It's quite a difficult race in terms of hot and cold. You get up high in the middle of the night, you have all your gear on, and it's cold, like it's 0 degrees, and it was really windy coming into Italy, and you couldn't see anything because it was just all this cloud was coming into your face. And then in the middle of the day, it was around 30 degrees. It was pretty hot. There's no wind in there, and you kind of like changing clothes and, you know, all that the whole day, trying to manage heat, trying to manage cold, and so there's a lot of gear that you need to take with you. And this is Jo. So Jo was, this was her race in Courmayeur on a Tuesday morning, and that was just like, Jo, did you want to say anything about that race? It was stunning, that race.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
It was
Straight up, straight down.
straight up, straight down. And you can see by the like terrain how steep everything is. It's kind of like Queenstown in terms of like steepness. It's just next level, that Fiordland kind of steepness. But I guess what got me was just that it just never ended. Like, you went up kind of those mountains, and then on the other side, after you went down, there was another set of really big mountains. And it's like, oh, man, some flat running would be awesome. And so this was on the day before UTMB. They introduced all the professional athletes, and that person there being introduced was Courtney Walter, who's the world champion. So she's breaking records everywhere. She's from the United States, and that was taken just on a training run, just like I guess the weekend before UTMB. The photo on the left was on the Friday night, just climbing out of Chamonix. So Chamonix is in the valley behind, and the Mont Blanc is actually on this side, so we're kind of running around like that. And so I was feeling really awesome there, pumped up. And then like that was, the photo on the right was, and I'm sure Lauren took a lot of photos that were way worse than that. That was like literally just 5 minutes after I finished. I just couldn't stand up. I was just rooted. And A station on the left is Courmayeur, which was at the 80k mark, so that was on the Saturday morning, and so Jo took that photo. And you're allowed drop bags, so you can take your own food into some of these aid stations, whereas the aid stations in between the drop bags, well, there's only one drop bag, wasn't there, Jo? Where the food was limited, and so they had mainly soup. They had other things like cheese, and salami, which was really interesting. And in Italy, they had pasta. And so, and that was cool. But when you got into Italy, I just spent like 7 days in France trying to get used to the language. But then you get into Italy, and then you're expecting people to say bonjour, but they're not. And that kind of threw me for a bit because I couldn't really work out what anyone was saying in Italy. So I was just kind of grabbing food and eating as much as I could, which was hard. It was just really difficult to get enough fuel in to fuel the body to keep it going. So that was the major challenge. I had enough training, I was fit enough, my support crew were really good. but it's just like fuel, just keeping the food.
Your Strava account says you use 17,000 calories.
17,000, yeah. I don't know if I ate 17,000.
It didn't look like you did.
No, I don't think so. I definitely didn't eat 17,000. And so it was Joe and Lauren at the finish line after the race, and they were completely shattered too. Like, they'd been up for basically 42 hours as well, sleeping on the lawn and just being hot and cold and hungry and sick of being on a bus. So yeah. And so like I just wanted to just mention the wider kind of support network of people who essentially enable me to get to UTMB, and many of these people, some of these people are here tonight, and these are like friends I run with from the Cambridge Running Club and community. And so it's always good to have like the support of local people who are kind of talking to you and encouraging you and giving you ideas. So that was just taken down at the River Trails down at Little Waipa, which is a good little training spot. And here's my wife and my son, and it's really cool that we all have a common interest in running, because it is such a time-consuming thing to do, and not every family understands the runner, and there's a lot of time involved in training, and it's just been really good to have the support of KCMB just to get me through, like, you know, through a race like this. And that is an important person there. That's one of my two physios. That's Karen from Karen Carmichael, and so she kind of keeps me going. And then kind of like my other ad hoc physio is Lauren. He treats me when I need it. And there's my little running buddy Jet. So she loves running, and it's really cool just to have her out on the trails as well. And then there's just a couple of pictures. The one on the right is at the finish line, and the one on the left is, I think that was at Trion, or one of the aid stations in Switzerland. Yeah, and they, you get in there at like 2 or 3 in the morning and they're pumping. Like there's people everywhere, and there's music going and people encouraging people, and it's amazing. It really is.
Allez, on nous donne les informations.
Well, we've made it to the morning. It's a pretty tough night. We went over 2 really big mountains, Col de Bonhomme and another one that was really high, Col de la Seine. That was the mountain that took us into Italy. So I've arrived in Courmayeur, which is in Italy, and it's Sapastine. So it's taken me about 2.5 hours to get from the air station where we last were, and here's the town itself. Okay, we're at the top. Just have a look at this. So Italy over there and Switzerland over here. Well, it's Sunday morning and the last leg is finally here. I'm just leaving Vallecine and popping up to Les Flégères before heading down towards the finish line in Chamonix. Feeling pretty tired but also pretty excited. It's coming up to like 38 and a half hours, so it's been pretty tiring, but it's been pretty cool. Here we are at Les Flégères, which is the last aid station for UTMB. It's quite a climb to get up to here and it's a pretty hot day. You can see the town of Chamonix down below us, and so we're going to head down there now to the finish line for UTMB. Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess there's an adventure part of my bit of the actual run, but then like you're going to Antarctica, so there's just the whole adventure of making your way down there. And we had also got to do some little fun activities after our race, which was awesome. So I've got a few photos of those as well. So basically I flew to South America and joined up with my tour group. So this is not like an event that you just go sign on the dotted line and pay your money and go. There's only a couple of tour companies that run marathon events in Antarctica. So I went for the cheaper one, but also the one that seemed to have the most adventure alongside it as well. So we made our way down to Ushuaia, which is the town at the bottom of South America. And we jumped on a ship, or a cruise ship, and made our way down. So this is the words that's on my t-shirt. And when I got back in New Zealand, there was a movie out about Ernest Shackleton's voyage where they couldn't make it to the South Pole. They basically had to winter over. So watching that documentary after being there, mine was like first class, next level compared to his journey. So definitely recommend watching that. But yeah, it's still a hazardous journey. It's still bitterly cold, but safe returners are more likely than doubtful. But no, still like just one of the most amazing places to visit. Like harsh and rough and barren in one sense, but then like totally amazing and majestic, and yeah, in another sense. So that's bottom of South America, and that's the kind of the passage that we made our way through. We anchored here overnight because there was a storm kind of going over through there. So we anchored there over the night, and then the next day we started making our way kind of weaving our way through down into here, down to King George Island, where we did our marathon. And then we made our way down to these two spots, and we just made our adventures, and then whack back up there. It takes about 2 days on the ship to get down, and like they call it the Drake shape. So you could either get it like just nice and bouncy, or you get this. We got the latter. So that's what it was looking like. So waves of 4.8 meters, about 9 seconds between each wave. Probably up to about 65 knots of wind, probably through some of the rougher patches. Wow. Yeah. And then when we got close to Antarctica, we had a lovely little rainbow. Nice little welcoming present. So I've got several photos of us. That's us looking out the window on the way. And yeah, it's just up, down, and you'd be walking, like say you've got your tray of food or whatever, and you're just walking along, and the next thing you're doing this. That was crazy. And then you're trying to walk up and down the stairs, or you'd be in your bed, and the next thing you're like, yeah, but
Not for me.
But I think that for me, that was like part of the adventure of it. It wasn't just like, yeah, a race you sign up for, you jump in your car and you drive there. Even when I was packing, like I laid everything out probably a month before, and the tour company had like a couple of like conference calls for the people. Kind of, we asked all the questions of what gear do we take, how should we train, what to expect, all of that sort of stuff. So I'd laid everything out of what I had, and then I'm like going, hit up my list of things I need to borrow, so I was going to my friends going, do you have this and do you have that? And, so that was pretty cool being able to borrow all the stuff. So I've got some stuff here, so I can kind of go through when we get to the race bit. So this is part of King George Island. So we started the race kind of over that way, and we did a loop up there. So we basically ran between the Russian base, the Argentinian base, and the Uruguayan base. There was the Chinese base there as well, but we weren't allowed on their base. So it was a 7K loop course, so to do that 6 times. So there was nowhere near as steep as your mountains, but we had lots of ups and downs. So by the time end of the race, we'd done like 1,000 meters of climbing, just going up, down, up, down, up, down. Because of the weather, like so we arrived in the Shire on the Sunday, we were meant to, and then we ended up leaving on the Monday. We arrived there on the Wednesday morning. We actually meant to race the Wednesday. By then, the race organisers were probably up to about plan D. By the end of the day, they told us they were going to split us into 2 waves because of some of the requirements to keeping like Antarctica as like clean and pristine as it is. You're only allowed 100 people on shore at one time. So to make sure that most of us had the best chance of finishing before it got dark and the weather came in, they split us into 2. So on the first day they had the fastest half marathoners and the half marathoners, and then us slower marathoners, they put us on the second day. The first day probably had the windiest day. We probably had a bit more of the wet. The wind wasn't quite as up, but we had more of the wet. So of course got quite muddy. So you used to learn how to like run your lines and where you had to like walk and that sort of thing. And also it's the first race where you don't actually know what day or what time you're starting until you get there. And when we arrived, they got us on shore and got us to like get ourselves ready, and then as soon as we were ready, they pretty much sent us off. Because also you can't take much on board in the 2 days that we were travelling over, they went through our gear, made sure there was no seeds or dirt or stones or anything on, so they got us cleaning all our gear and making sure we had everything. They had a tarpaulin at the start line, a start-finish line, and then another tarpaulin probably about a couple of Ks in, and that's where we could leave our drink bottles. I ended up taking a camelback because I was like, no, I want to be able to drink more often than like at start finish and at the 2K mark. At the start finish I had a bottle of Coke. That was my last lap. I need extra energy scenario. And then nothing else could kind of go off that, so you had to carry everything. Even if you took stuff off, you have to hold it or put it on the tarpaulin. And also what was so cool is we had penguins at the start finish line. Everyone loved like watching the penguins. The other thing with that is there's various times there's bird flu going around, so you're not allowed to get too close to the penguins. Hence that's also why you can't put stuff on the ground. And then this is on race day, so I've effectively got my running shoes, my thicker running socks, winter weight running tights. On top I had 1, 2, 3, 4 layers, and I still was a bit cold, along with a buff, a beanie, gloves, and then because it's like snow on the ground at various times, you still need cap, sunglasses and sunscreen. And then this was the best jacket ever. This is what they provided us, and we kind of had these on for as long as possible until the start, and then put them on as soon as we finished. So they're nice and warm and kept us safe. This is kind of thing with that temperature. I don't know exact temperature, but it was probably somewhere between 0 and -5. So you can probably handle it for a little bit, but especially when you've been running and you've sweated and you've got wet and it's windy. Thankfully, I know I got cold, but I warmed up pretty quickly, so I knew I kind of kept my temperature, well under control. We didn't really have any support crew other than our fellow travellers. So those of us who didn't race on the first day, once they'd got most of the runners, some of the runners started coming off, they could take some of us on, so we could go and have a little look around. And then the second day, those that had run were able to come on, the same thing, come on and kind of helped them be our cheering squad. One of the really cool things, because we'd already spent like several days on the ship kind of going through talks and stuff together and having meals and things together, there's a really cool camaraderie. You kind of had like your friends, and so you kind of like, and it being a loop course, you're waving to each other as you went through and cheering each other on, which was really cool. Because sometimes on that back part of the course it's freezing cold, it can get quite lonely. So it was nice knowing, oh, I've seen them, so I know then it's them, and you kind of got to see your regular people coming through. So that's just some more views. That's on the Russian part of the base, and then that's kind of that one at the top, is looking back across. And then how we got on shore was through these zodiacs. So at the it was at the stern of the ship. We climbed out onto them. Probably could take about 10 of us on. Part of the reason why they kind of delayed the start or delayed the race a day, is it had to be below like 30 knots for the zodiacs to even be able to get out. So it was a bit touch and go on the Thursday, and then it was okay on our day of Friday. They tried to also get in as close inshore with our cruise ship, so it meant only like 5 minutes on the zodiacs rather than like 10 or 15 minutes, so that was really good. The drivers of those were like absolutely amazing. They got us in quickly and manoeuvred us through the waves and currents. So that was race day. We got to get a medal. It's got penguins and stuff on, so I'll pass that around if you want to have a look. And then we also got a finisher's top. Oh, that's the wrong one. Oh, we got a finisher's top, which was kind of same sort of blue and had all of that penguin paraphernalia on. So initially we were meant to have about 3 days of adventures, but because it had taken us longer to get down and then racing was over 2 days, so it kind of got merged into 1 day of racing. But God gave us the most perfect day for an adventure day. This is the kind of morning we had, woke up looking like that, and we got to go and look at, this was like an old whaling station. You can see some of the whale bones there on the left. There's lots of penguins. I think I've got a penguin shot, but we had like little flags to kind of know where we were to walk to kind of stay away from like the breeding areas and things like that. We went down there, we were there the second half of March, so it was kind of the end of the season, like the tourist season in a sense, before it started moving into the winter, which meant it was the last sort of penguins before they kind of migrating north for the winter. So these are some seals. I suppose you could call them like teenagers.
Might want to back up a bit here.
Wildlife that we don't normally get to see here, and even though we're to keep our distance, still being able to get that close in the natural habitat was pretty amazing. And then we also were crazy enough to do the polar plunge. So when I'm talking about there on the right hand photo, like, you know how you get like that brain freeze from ice cream? Like type that like. So yeah, they had these belts that they kind of put around us, mainly so that they could just pull us in if we couldn't swim out. So we climbed out of the ship onto the edge of the Zodiac, and then basically we just jumped in.
Did anyone not want to do it?
Probably about 3/4 of the people did it, and there's been another quarter who didn't want to do it.
So how long were you in the water? Half a second?
Probably a few more seconds by the time I turned around and like put any like 2 strokes back and then got back out. But yeah, but you're in Antarctica, you kind of have to do a polar plunge.
How long did it take for your body to warm up?
Probably not too long. I pretty much went and jumped straight in the shower afterwards. But there's kind of sometimes, for me anyway, sometimes I have like this residual cold, like I can get cold, then I warm up, but if I then go and have something cold, my temperature drops pretty quickly again. So thankfully I think we just had like hot soup and stuff like that to get the core temperature back up. But yeah, it's that cold that you wouldn't last long in that sort of temperature. If we weren't getting out straight away and then like showering and getting changed, yeah, we'd go straight into like hypothermia and
Have you been practicing Karapera?
No, but yeah, you can kind of see like just in the distance the main part of Antarctica. So yeah, these are just some other cool photos. Penguins, icebergs in the background. Yeah, as you can see, like it's stark, but at the same time there's just this majestic feel about it. Like you just don't really see that sort of terrain anywhere else. So I think there's a seal there. Also, because we're at the end of the season, the like winter ice floe was starting to form. So that was a kind of a bit, like I felt a bit like weary on that, because I'm like, if something happens to the Zodiac, because this was after we'd been and done our polar plunge. So I'm like, if something happens to the Zodiac and we go in the water, the ship's like another 100 meters that way. Yes, I've got this jacket on, but it's not going to help. And you could kind of hear, like, as the Zodiac was going over, just like the ice kind of hitting the underside, and like the motor kind of revving as it's making its way through the ice. And even I think it might have been on this little bit around there, but further you could kind of hear like the ice and the kind of falling down in. You kind of like hear it first, you're like, oh, where did that kind of come down? So there's just some more. So that was the ship we stayed on. Like not when I wear means like the biggest cruise ships, but for the trip we're doing, that was kind of like luxury. Like you had your food provided for. So effectively, there's really more staff on the ship than there was, I guess, tourists on there, or runners on there. There's probably about maybe 170 odd of us, either running the half, the full, or friends or family who were just going there to support. But then they had the crew that actually like run the ship in terms of the captain and his crew. There was, I guess, the expedition crew who took us out on the adventures and made sure we were safe getting onto shore for the run. There was the running tour company that had arranged everything, so they had their staff. And then there was the hotel staff, which included like the cleaners, the people who clean your rooms, the people who cook your meals. So yeah, it was like a whole little mini village. And then when we got back, they were then restocking or refueling and making their way up to Canada and doing kind of like the Northern Hemisphere summer up through Alaska and Canada. So it pretty much just goes up and down through the year. It's just all the like ice and yeah, starting to form.
Did you go through that in the Zodiac?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well done, Hughie. Well, congratulations to you both. The first thing I'd like to ask you is about training. So Chris, you knew that you were going 5 months before the race. Can you tell us a bit about where you trained and how you trained?
I decided to do quite a lot of climbing because the race obviously has a lot of climbing, so I spent quite a bit of time. I tried to get over to Mangatotiri at least once a week. It was a little bit hard over winter, just like running with the head torch continually, getting home from work. I did biking once a week, swimming once a week, running 5 times a week. Did that for 3 to 4 months, and then I got to a point about 4 to 6 weeks before the race where I was doing about 120k a week, with about 3,000 to 4,000 meters of climbing, and I guess I had to kind of back off on that because I was just doing a bit too much and I got a bit injured, and so I think the training wasn't really the issue in the end. Like the training was fine. I did enough training. I met people out on the course who'd done far less training than me, and they were going really well. But it was hard over winter, and just in the going over that mountain takes 3 hours there and back, or 3 to 4 hours actually. So and doing that at night time enabled me to see a lot of kiwi, which was cool. But it was hard. It was hard.
And Hughie, what about you? How did you prepare for the conditions that you were going to face, training-wise?
Well, you kind of can't really prepare for it given that we're just like training through our summer. So I tried to get as fit as possible until I got COVID 6 weeks before I went. So I had probably about most of February off training, just like getting over the initial bit, and then I ended up having like 2 to 3 weeks where I was just smashed. Like even walking to work, which is like 2 minutes walk away, was had my lungs burning. My first kind of 3 or 4k training run, probably maybe second to last week of February, was the worst run like I felt like I've ever done. And I thought, oh no, here we go, I've gone and messed this up, I'm gonna like go downhill again. But next day I was like, okay, I'm not actually feeling too bad. So I gave another day and then I had another run, felt a bit better, and so I just kind of gradually did that. My longest training run was a 12k run walk the Saturday before I flew out. So I pretty much broke every training rule. So the whole time going around I was praying, going, please let me finish, please keep me going, please let my body remember all the training I've done in like the years before that. So yeah, no, if it wasn't for God, I would not have gone around, because yeah, I broke every rule in the book.
Okay, let's talk about mandatory gear. Now, I know, Hughie, you said you didn't have any, which I find really surprising, because for those of you who might not be aware, most of the times when you enter any of these races, there's some element of mandatory gear. Chris definitely had a fair bit of mandatory gear, so it's not like, oh yeah, I can run 100k or 50k easy. Well, imagine having this on your back. I mean, hopefully Chris is going to show what he's got in his pack and how much it actually weighs, because it's not quite as simple as you think.
Yeah, I guess all up, it's, I don't know, it's quite heavy. I haven't got everything in here, but I've got most things. It's probably about 5 kilos there. And so I did a lot of my training with it on, so I was fine with it. It was, I think you'd get into trouble if you didn't train with all your gear. So I keep most things in the back in a waterproof container, and I keep my liquids and snack foods in the front with things like sunglasses and sunscreen and that type of stuff. You also have like a small medical kit and toilet paper and all that sort of stuff that you probably want to just keep in the front. But several times I had to take my pack off and just get gear out to put on or take off. So you need a hat, you need your poles, like pretty much you need poles for the whole race. There's not too many points where you're not going up or down. You need a good pair of running shoes, like you need a pair of running shoes that will stop you from injuring your feet when you hit rocks or going over rocks. The rocks are really sharp, and so there's a lot of rubber between yourself and the sole of your feet, so you need something that's going to support you and be comfortable for a long time. So they were really good. You need to take emergency food, so plus all the food that you take yourself. You need to take 2 torches with backup like power supplies. So I had a power bank because I needed to recharge my watch and other stuff. I use batteries, spare batteries. Waterproof pants. You need a compression bandage. You need a pair of tights when it's cold. You need to have a container to keep your soup in. Hat, thing, polyprop. You need your jacket, sealed. You need waterproof gloves and waterproof and like really warm.
You need to be good at packing.
Passport, because you run through 3 countries, and so you need ID on you, just in case. You need money, so you have kind of, well, they recommend €20, and so, but they will need to get you like lip balm. You need, because everything is so expensive in Europe, it's horrendous. And you need one of them, emergency blanket. And if all else fails, you need a whistle. And you need a phone. And like I had my GoPro and American belt around me, and like I was really used to everything being picked over. In New Zealand and Australia, everything's picked over before the start of the race, quite thoroughly. And so when I got to UTMB, it was all a bit kind of laissez-faire. So you don't even check any of your gear at registration. So I was really kind of stressed about it. But you basically get out of registration in a few minutes.
but they check on course and they stop everyone, and you have to take your backpack off and pull out like 3 random mandatory items, and you must have them, otherwise there's a time penalty or you could be disqualified from the race. So that has happened to some of the like leading runners before. So yeah, there's a lot of gear. That's the normal gear. If it's cold, there's an extra cold weather kit, and they let you know a few days beforehand whether or not it's going to be cold or it's going to be hot. And it wasn't like super hot, like the week before we got there it was like 35 degrees, and they would have activated like extra gear that you needed to take for hot weather, but as it turned out it was pretty good.
So unlike previous years at UTMB, and we watch a lot of YouTube, UTMB races, you had good conditions. How important do you think that was?
It was really important. Like I couldn't, like on a normal year, a third of the people pull out. On a bad year, up to half the people pull out. And so I was like, I was pretty nervous at the start of the race. I hadn't done anything like that before. I knew it was going to be really hard. I just didn't want it. Like at the start of the week, it was snowing for the PTL. And so it was very cold at the start of the week, and then as the week went on, it appeared that the weather was going to get good. And so at least that wasn't like a factor, but holy smokes, like in the middle of the night going over some of those mountains between France and Italy, it was bad enough without it being bad weather. And so it would have been, look, it was great just being out there taking photos, even though you weren't feeling the best at times, at least it was sunny. And you know, if it was raining or snowing, which it often is, it would have been really hard. Yeah.
And Hughie, what about you? You had fairly poor conditions, but I'm wondering what it was like, that kind of unpredictability of when you were going to start. Did that kind of throw you a little bit?
Yeah, it does kind of throw you a bit, but it was kind of interesting, just like on the ship, I thought I was just trying to like enjoy it, because it's like you only get to do this sort of thing once, so trying not to get like too stressed of like not knowing you know, when it was going to happen. And then I guess in terms of like the safety kind of aspect, with having like a loop course, you know, you're never too far away from now. They had a couple of people on like 3-wheelers who were just kind of going back and forth along the course, checking up on us. We had like 2 doctors with us. So one was the ship doctor and one was the Marathon Tours doctor. So yeah, we had really good kind of medical support from that. So then it was kind of like, well, they're doing their best to make it safe for us. So it's just kind of like, you know, relying on that rather than trying to stress out going, don't know where to start. It's kind of like, yeah, trying to make it part of the adventure and enjoy it as being part of the adventure. So it's, you know, often you have to like not know when things are. So I'm like, okay, let's just roll with it.
Okay, so Chris, your little up bits on your map, that total 10 kilometres of elevation, if anyone can even fathom what that is like. 2 questions. How did you cope with the altitude, and how much of the course was actually runnable?
Well, I guess if you're the winner, most of the course is runnable. But for me, I guess, it was way less than half. I was hiking for hours, just up long stretches, and you know, you weren't going that fast on the way down the other side. It wasn't like a real nice buffed out trail. I would say maybe a third of the time I was running, and more often than not I was walking. Yeah, running slowly. What was the second question?
Coping with the altitude.
No, the altitude wasn't bad. When I first got there, it was, I don't know, it's, you know, I ran up from 1,000 metres to about 2,000 metres, and I was just out of breath a little bit. It wasn't too bad after a week of just running around. It was fine. Like, there's a race in the United States, which is the same, pretty much the same profile, and the same length, but it's way higher. The whole race is essentially over 10,000 feet. It's called Hard Rock, and that's where you have to go like two to 3 weeks beforehand to acclimatise to that altitude. So the altitude wasn't too bad, but it was noticeable.
And how to see it? So Chris did the Tarawera Miler, which is exactly almost the same distance in 22 hours. And this race has taken 42. How do you kind of process that while you're running? You know, thinking when you get to the 20, I'd be finished if it was.
Yeah, I was kind of on the back foot. Like they're really organised, and they know your runner's index, and they know how fast you run previous races, and they give you estimated times for when you're supposed to be in aid stations at UTMB. And my estimated time was about, Joe, 35 hours. And so, I knew I wasn't going to make that pretty early on, just because of the congestion, and then just because it was so hard, and I was a little bit worried for my support crew, because I was supposed to be in Courmayeur at 7 a.m. on the Saturday. I don't know, it was early, and I wasn't there until like 10:30 or 11 a.m. and I was thinking, holy smokes, I wonder what Lauren and Joe are doing. And then I was kind of thinking, you know, this has been really hard, and the race really doesn't even start until that 100k mark. And I was thinking, wow, am I going to do this? But you just got to like be in the moment, put your head down, do the best that you can. And like all up, it took me 42 hours. I was under the time limit by 4.5 hours. I spent 4 hours in aid stations. And so that was quite a lot of time, and but the serious runners, I think, spend like 15 minutes tops in all the aid stations across the course. Like if I was going to do it again, I'd definitely see a nutritionist and get more of a plan around how much fuel I needed between each of the aid stations. So I ran a race on Saturday, and I played around with a few different ideas that had formed during the race at UTMB, and it's just that continual learning process. It's not just about the running. It's about your support, and it's about what you eat and how you problem solve little injuries, because you do get little niggles on the way around, and you have to kind of work your way through a lot of stuff. And it's not just the physical stuff; it's the mental stuff, and coping with when things aren't going right. What do you do, and how do you kind of get yourself up the mountain?
Now, I would have thought that after 42 hours of running, you just want to find a hole and crawl into it, but that didn't really happen, did it?
Oh no, not really. So we went to Paris like a week after, and spent because after you run a really long way, my feet swell up quite a lot, and so, but we still wanted to enjoy Paris, and that was a lot of walking around. And then when I got back, I'd already signed up for the Tokyo Ultra last Saturday, so I could run that, because I didn't think I'd get into UTMB. So I thought, oh, I can't be doing nothing, so I'm going to sign up for the Tokyo Ultra in October. And so I signed up for that, and then I still, on the back of my fitness from UTMB and a bit of rest, I did that on Saturday. So yeah, so that worked out.
Yeah. And what about recovery for you, Hughie?
So yeah, I pretty much just carried on I stayed in South America for another 3 weeks. Caught up with some friends in Paraguay, went to Santiago in Chile, and then joined up with another tour group and hiked for about 3 days in Patagonia, going up and down and camping and things like that. And then came back with a Giardia bug. So spent the next month at home trying to sort out what it was, while trying to still run and going, why do I have no energy? So yeah, I kind of kept going as well.
Okay, and what's your next marathon?
So my next one is the Tarawera Ultra 50k in February next year. So I've got Auckland half next weekend, and then run in Whakatane in November, kind of like my little.
Are you
build-up
doing
to-
Choice Challenge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, doing that with Fred and a few others from.
I
the
think there's a
Cambridge
few
club.
others from the club
Yeah.
going as well. And Chris, what about for you?
Yeah, I might do that too, but yeah, that sounds really cool. It's a good course, and then like I'm hoping to get into a race in Italy next year called Lavoredo, which runs through the Dolomites, which is a UNESCO kind of World Heritage Area. So that's in June, and that's like 120k with lots of climbing as well. So it's another lottery. So I kind of find out next week if I'll gain entry to that. So, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I've talked enough. Like to now open it up to the floor, or maybe any comments from Joe or Lauren to see if Chris's recollection of his experience has changed in the last 5 weeks.
I was just going to say that there was a very patch in the middle of it, which we kind of went a bit quiet on the photos and on the explanations, and that could have been a bit of a dark time.
So, any questions for either Chris or Hughie? Yeah.
Are there other Antarctic marathons to choose from?
I think there's one other, but I heard about it when I was on this trip. But you fly in and you pretty much to one of the bases. I think a bit further on the main peninsula of Antarctica, not on the little island that we're on. But you pretty much run around the airport, like the tarmac. So yeah, and then you pretty much fly back out, and I'm like, no, I'm glad I'm doing this one, because yeah, you actually got to experience more of Antarctica and just the adventure of it, of going down on the ship and that sort of thing. And yeah, it was cheaper than
Jason?
Yeah, Chris, I'm interested in nutrition. So you kind of already answered it, but how much did you plan the sort of calories an hour or the carbohydrates an hour that you needed?
I didn't.
I think that was the problem.
It's just like a matter of like, you know, Mike Tyson's got that famous saying, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face, and it's kind of like that with ultra running. You want to eat, you know, you go and you go, I'm going to eat every 20 minutes, and you're eating every 20 minutes until your stomach just starts shutting down, and you're just trying to eat anything that you can, and you go through little phases where, you know, you're eating Snickers bars and they work, and then you can't fathom eating another Snickers bar, and then like apples, like it was a stage where I went through an apple phase, and then I learned, I didn't know the French word for apple, and I couldn't even like describe it, because they had apples at some aid stations and not at others, and I was going, where are the apples? And they were going, what? Like on last weekend I tried Greek yogurt with muesli and sultanas, and that worked really, really well. So I'm gonna like stay on that. The things like ginger nuts, they can work really well. There's a whole heap of nutrition you can actually put in your liquid that you're drinking, like Tailwind. But after a period of time, as you know, that kind of just gets yuck. So you're just continually kind of cycling through things. I'm quite lucky in the fact that I don't throw up, whereas a lot of runners were throwing up. They just couldn't get anything down. And I guess once you can't get anything down, you know, you just count down until you're DNF, you have to pull out because you just got no energy. But yeah, it's just one of those things, you know, it's very personal, and you do your best you can with what you got. Like, the distance between those aid stations might have been 10k, but it could have taken 4 hours to travel that 10k. And so I underestimated that in terms of the time, the energy needed to travel that 10k. And when I got to the next aid station, I tried to eat as much as I could and carry as much as I could, but I just found I just couldn't get it all in. And so you just continually you feel like your body's just depleting in terms of energy slowly and slowly and slowly, and you're just trying to stave off the end, I guess. So yeah.
What did you do, Chris, in regards to when you got to the point where you're getting into a really dark place, and at what point did you or how did you manage to get yourself out of those situations? Because I know it can be quite tough. Especially because the race was it took you twice as long to do the distance as it did the last one. The last 100 mile.
Yeah. I guess I'm not someone who looks at my watch too much. Like I actually kind of turn off the timer function and I just look at the time of day, and that's more helpful for me just to plan my meals and look at how long it's taken me to get from one point to another point. I guess Lauren said something to me like when I was lying down, she said like you have sleep, and then I had to sleep for 15 minutes, and then it just reset my nervous system. I was just like all screwed up, and that 15 minutes of sleep just did so much in terms of like mentally resetting me. My coordination was better. I noticed there was a Kiwi woman who ran past me like on the second night, and she was I ran past her actually. She was really struggling and tripping up, and I talked to her for a bit, and I said, look, get to the next aid station, have 15 minutes worth of sleep, because she hadn't slept, and that was probably, I don't know, 30 something hours into the race. And so I think sleep is something that, like for a race like that, you need to plan for in terms of just your mental ability to cope with coordination, and when you don't have that sleep, your mindset kind of changes as well. So even though it was 15 minutes, it just felt kind of amazing waking up. I felt kind of refreshed. And
did it take you by surprise that you had to sleep like that? Like, I suppose you would have done your research and realised it was going to happen at some point.
I don't know who suggested it, but I think
we were the people, because your previous had might have been only 22 hours.
Yeah.
I don't think you contemplated needing to sleep.
no.
And we were at the aid station. It was the 22-hour mark, and we were seeing all these people coming in that did need to sleep. And
Yeah.
we've been talking about how you would sleep and why you might sleep. And then Chris entered the aid station in the state where his whole system needed a rest. And we just felt like we needed to encourage, like it was like everything needed to recover and to just stop and sleep a little bit. And it was actually a beautiful spot. Chris said it was, what did you say? Like, where are we? This mountains, this green valley.
Yeah.
It was like, this place, it's like we're on another planet. Like, this is like, it was like Dunedin.
Yeah, that's right.
So sleep was good. And you just, from then on, you were back to your normal happy self?
Yeah,
But you definitely weren't yourself for
No, I wasn't myself yet. And I started seeing things on that second night too, and so I was just a little bit more. I was sleep deprived on the second night, but I had enough to keep me going to the finish line. Yeah.
So people who have to pull out, say at the top of one of those isolated mountains, how do they get them out?
Good question. I didn't see any helicopters, but I had a friend who was, they pay marshals at the aid stations, pay close attention to the runners coming in, and so my friend, he got to about the 85k mark aid station, and they noticed he had a cough, and by the time he got to that 100k aid station, they had radioed ahead, and they looked at him, and they said, no, you can't continue. So that was, because in a lot of races in New Zealand and Australia, there's always helicopters flying around and people getting ferried from A to B, but I didn't see one helicopter, even though there were a lot of people lying on the side of the course, like just lying down. And they've just got a different way of dealing with a lot of things in France. They just do things differently, and some of those things are really cool.
They don't have ACC though, do they?
They don't. And so what happens is, like, before you do this event or any physical activity in France, you need to go and see a doctor. So I had to go to my GP in Cambridge, and he signed a medical certificate saying that I was fit and healthy to complete the race. So you don't have any problems with suing them. And also, you have to take out compulsory race insurance, and so that's like comprehensive. And on top of that, I'd Southern Cross medical travel insurance. Yeah, which I'd recommend. Like,
Did you have any cramp during?
no, I didn't have any cramp. I don't really suffer from cramp or too many blisters or anything like that. So that's a very good blessing. Yeah. A lot of the like people competing in that race are hikers. Like hiking is a really huge thing in Europe, and so like they're just power hiking the whole way. They're not even running. And I was kind of thinking to myself, well, you know, should I just power hike this and spend less time in the aid stations? Because they seem to be doing it really well, and they kind of live in that area. And they also walked. They didn't even run flats. A lot of the Europeans, they just walked the flats. They walked the Alps, and then they just completely go mental on the downhills and just bomb it, which is, I don't know how they do it, but it's just part of their kind of psyche and culture. So you'd be, like I'd be running past lots and lots of people on any flat bit, and pretty much we're all going at the same speed on the way up, but on the way down, all the Europeans, and for some reason people from Thailand, just bombing it down like, you know, Killing and Journey, like on a YouTube video. So, but eventually, you know, stuff like that can catch up with you because it really hurts your quads on the downhill. So you have to kind of look after your quads, because once they kind of fry on downhills, then it makes just doing anything, including walking, really painful. Yeah.
Yes.
So you started at what, 3 or 4 in the morning?
6 p.m. on Friday night.
Oh, PM.
Yes.
How did you sleep the night before?
I can't remember. I
Charlie?
think it was okay.
Sounded fine.
Like, it's unusual, like in, I think the first American man won that race this year in 20 years, and they don't have any races in the United States that start in the evening and force runners to run a night. And so that was one of the things that they thought was holding back like American men from winning the race. So it's just a different way. Like, they don't do anything in the morning in France. And so I think it's just part of their kind of culture to start things late and finish late. So, yeah.
How did you choose your support group? Because I imagine they seem lovely and they like it.
They self-selected, Stu.
It was an expensive process. It kind of went along the lines of, hey Joe, I got into UTMB, and then Joe went, oh, can I come too? You know, yeah. And then Lauren was already in Europe with the New Zealand kayak team, or canoe team? Yeah, so she had finished in Germany and then came down that week to support, so I was really lucky to have the support of both of those two ladies and get a massage on the Thursday night from Lauren. That's pretty good.
And reassurance.
The reassurance, it was really good, because I kind of had a little niggle, and Lauren gave me a different technique for actually climbing, which helped a lot actually. So it's just another little kind of thing that helps you along the way, listening to different bits of advice.
And just to clarify, Stu, he did ask me to go.
Oh, really?
Oh.
You said no, won't happen.
That was part of our conversation. I said, oh, awesome, I'll go.
And as it turned out, like, because I got in so late and I got onto Airbnb, there was very little in the way of accommodation, and it was ultra expensive, and we stayed in this tiny room for like 8 days, and like, I don't know how we did it, but we got there, we got through lots, we climbed lots of obstacles. Joe was sick the week beforehand, and she managed to not eat anything for a couple of days and complete her race and then get out and support me. So a lot of things came together in that week, and I was really thankful that they came together. Like, one of us, we could have all got COVID that week. So there were lots of obstacles, like physical, mental, emotional obstacles for completing massive things like this, and lots of pressure as well, because we all took time off work and it's expensive, and other people are sacrificing their time to now enable you to do these things. So yeah, it was really pleasing to actually just finish it for not only myself but for a lot of other people.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, please thanking our speakers.